Welcome to the Judgment Free Zone. You've downloaded the Alcohol Free Marriage Podcast, episode 27 for October 17th, 2022.
Now adjust the volume control so that the sound can be heard in all parts of the room.
Recorded live from the cornfields of Central Illinois, you're listening to the Alcohol Free Marriage Podcast with Matt and Amy. Come and learn and share a journey with two former craft beer enthusiasts who went from daily drinkers to teetotalers and basically never lost their love for their life together.
Hey, a freak show!
Well, hello, children. Welcome back to your weekly freak show that is the Alcohol Free Marriage Podcast. I'm Matt, along with the always lovely Coach Amy. How are you, my love?
I am just awesome. I really don't know if I like how you call us a freak show.
You know what? A lot of people would consider two sober married people a freak show. Like, really? What's wrong with those people? Why don't they drink? They both don't drink? Why?
What's wrong with them? Did they have a problem? Did they have a problem?
You don't feel like we're a bit of an anomaly? An anomaly? Probably. I say we are, but it's all right.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right. And now people know why you're calling it a freak show.
I've been called worst by worse looking, so...
Wow.
I think that's how you're supposed to say it. Worse by better looking. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, kids, welcome back. It's been a beautiful time around here in the cornfields. The weather has been beautiful until today. Now it sucks, but we had a great weekend, the band weekend. This is our last year of our 8-year tour of duty of marching band.
Yes.
The band is 2-1. Does that mean they've won? No, 2-0. I mean they've won 2, lost 1, 0. I don't know how that works. They've won. They're undefeated.
Okay.
First place and grand champion.
Yeah, because one of the competitions rained out and that was awful.
I don't understand why the trophy has to be so big. The grand champion trophy last week was taller than our daughter. Now, mind you, she's only 5 foot, but still, it was so big they couldn't run it.
So huge.
Yeah,
it was so exciting.
It was kind of hilariously large.
I'll tell you what, we went and we watched the 3A bands, and then we're in 4A. Need to have a little,
I guess,
cough button.
I have a cough button.
And the bands are smaller in 3A.
And 2A smaller than 1A. That's how the numbers work.
Well, I know, but it's a big jump when you go up into 4A. And yes, the volume and our kids, it was... Now, granted, we are biased, but...
No. What?
But people who hadn't seen it, who,
There was a lot of crowd, not participation, but crowd enthusiasm.
Yeah, and which would be participation.
You don't have down the field, it becomes a whole mess.
It was just, the kids just were...
Psyched.
Oh my gosh, and it was just such great sound. The whole show, a lot of fun. People, people coming together.
coming together, holding hands, kumbaya.
Well, it was cold, so we were all cramped in together. And then when people would leave, it's like, oh, please come sit in front of us.
I'm a little
really
torn
cold.
though with the food arrangement there.
I understand why they did.
I'm happy because it really helped with crowd and line control, but you had to go to like 18 different spots at different ends of the stadium to get everything needed.
They did explain everything. I will say it was very
But how many people when they show up to an event, unless you were an Eagle Scout, know from the second they walk in the door, which way's north? I don't have a damn clue. I'm like, yeah, I found the place. North end has this, south end has this. First thing I did is ask somebody,
okay,
what's that mean?
Well, then you go to one end and then you clearly discover what end you're on. When you are getting your hot cocoa, then you're on the north end.
Let the record show, Your Honor, I wouldn't have had to go to two ends if somebody didn't want their hot cocoa because that was on its own at the other end.
I got my hot cocoa.
Which I said is very hot. Then I get a text from her, the hot cocoa's hot. Yes, it is.
But it was fun. It was great.
Good time to be sober because you got to drive all the way across, not the state, but quite a ways, an hour away. Not far enough you wouldn't want to be drinking.
Well, and for all of you who live in big cities, we're wimps here, apparently. It wasn't that far at all.
But it's 60 miles. I mean, 1 hour in a big city could be like 10 miles.
I know, but it wasn't...
Either way, you don't want to be drunk in your car for an hour, I'm just saying, period.
Oh, yeah. It was great, though. We had fun. It was just, it was a wonderful day in the cornfields as the fields are coming out and it's fall. And then
Coach Amy had a photo shoot out in the wilderness and the trees with the dog.
Updated a couple pictures on my website.
Yeah, so if you go to jointheotherside.com, you will see all the Coach Amy photos.
Yeah, and just want to remind everybody to go out and like, share, and subscribe. Find us. Share this podcast with your friends.
Comment.
And remember that you do not have to be married to
enjoy this.
You
may not enjoy it even if you are married.
You can be sober curious. You don't have to be quitting drinking.
No.
You can just listen in and see how, I guess, two freaks podcast and live their life alcohol-free.
I had somebody this week go, "You podcast?" I said, "I'm an old school podcaster, girl."
Yeah, old school.
And if you are curious, go to jointheotherside.com where you can download the 5 o'clock somewhere sober edition. Is that it?
5 o'clock somewhere, the alcohol-free edition.
That's close.
It's our little sober curious guide.
Did you get started kit, kids?
Basically, it's got some of our tactics and everything in there. It's just, it was the things that we did when we
right, wrong, or indifferent. But
apparently it worked for us.
Although it
might work for you.
I saw somebody on our groups, and I always feel like I'm so far into it, like, you can almost let your guard down, or everything should be fine. And somebody was like, 3 years. They didn't say they'd been sober for 3 years, but 3 years into it. And then they went back and they're already drinking 5 days in a week and a bottle a night. And I'm like, well, I guess that's what happens when just because you quit for a long time doesn't mean if you start drinking a lot, you're not going to start doing it again.
I think what the big thing that people don't realize is that your neural pathways are so established. And when you have been a drinker for many years, decades sometimes, as in the case of us, and those neural pathways, they lessen, but they never go away. You actually create new neural pathways. And so
when you start drinking, right,
and
back
you
down
have
that
fading effect bias. So you get about a year. Well, sometimes, you get a year out and you're like, oh, wow, I can handle this. This isn't a big deal. Maybe I really didn't have an issue. And so then you can easily be led right down that path. But the other thing is, it also depends on what you do. If you take a drink, if you are giving that drink power.
What would you say there, Dave? The reason why?
If you give it a job. But if you come up and you drink, and the next thing you know, you drink too much, and then you start beating yourself up. Why did I do this? And go down that path of beating yourself up. The next thing you know, well, what do we do when we start beating? What was our old pattern?
Beat yourself up, drink. Beat yourself up, drink.
Exactly. So
if I'm not gonna quit, I'll just keep drinking
more. If you would
more.
look at it, because I know someone who 2 years in and had a drink, but her mindset was, oh, wow, that just happened. I'm not good with this. I can tell what's happening right now. And instead of beating herself up, she looked back and she said, okay, I know where this is going. And I'm not giving up everything that I have learned, because there is no failure. It's only learning and wisdom. And she's like, okay, pick myself up and I'm moving forward. And that's what you have to do if this is what you're choosing to do with your life.
That's your path. Mm-hmm. Well, and you know what, kids? If you really want to stay sober, take a tip from us in the drink of the week.
Oh,
this week's drink, it's warm, it's fall, it's tea time here on the
It is tea time.
Alcohol-Free Marriage
my
Podcast.
gosh, we have come so far.
Yeah, it's almost 5 o'clock and we're drinking tea. That did.
Cheers.
Yeah, and our Ray Dunn mugs.
Yeah, well, as our nephew says, we basically, no, not we, I have bought a font.
yeah, you're paying for a font.
So thank you, Turtle Tim.
So, yeah. But anyway, we did tea this week. But I have a nice English breakfast. You don't remember what?
No, it's cranberry.
Oh, cranberry.
But it's a generic, I will tell you. It's a generic.
Mine's not. Mine is the Republic of Tea.
Yes.
English breakfast with some bespoke mint simple syrup.
Oh, I was going to say, oh, nice. I was going to say, you got some notes in there or something?
Yeah, some notes of mint. I don't know. But yeah, so mine's a little bougier than yours. But you know me, I
should have put some of that in there.
No, only for bougie. Only for bougie. So, Amy, we do have an interview coming up, but the interview focuses around this being Sober October and Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and found a few things that speak to why alcohol and cancer in general, but alcohol and breast cancer can be tied together. One is alcohol is empty calories. We all know that, kids, and can lead to unwanted weight gain, and excess fat can lead to increased cancer risks.
Correct.
Simple, straightforward there. There's 2 benefits if you quit drinking on that one. Alcohol can increase your levels of estrogen and other hormones associated with breast cancer. Does that apply to men? Does it apply?
Men can
increase their estrogen too?
Mm-hmm. Huh. I mean.
That's why I grew boobs before. And C3, alcohol users are more likely to have increased amounts of folic acid in their system, which can lead to increased cancer risks.
Isn't that interesting? Because we had, but when we needed to have folic acid to have a child. Like that was one of the essential things that you had to have.
I don't know. Think they still do that? I don't know.
Oh yeah, no, because if you don't have enough of that, then your child can have spina bifida.
Well, my guess is when you're birthing a child, growing a human in your body, you may get depleted of folic acid and need additional versus just constantly jacking your folic acid up.
Yeah.
I don't know much about folic acid.
But once again, it is a carcinogen, a class 1.
Class 1. You know what? We're
just like cigarettes.
First class around here, kids. All right, Coach Amy, tell me, speaking of breast cancer and Sober October, tell me about our interview coming up in the next few seconds.
Well, you're going to have to wait here because I have to be able to, I got to close something.
And while we're waiting, don't forget to go to jointheotherside.com. I know I already said that, but I don't have anything else to riff about while Coach Amy over here tries to find the document on some random screen on her computer that she just can't figure out, and I can't be tech support 24/7, so
I got it.
She found it. There you go. Woo, tell us about our interview, Amy.
Well, our interview today is with the lovely Kath Elliott, and she is the alcohol mindset coach. And Catherine is from Australia. She, her story, I guess, is she discovered that she had breast cancer after she had quit drinking. And in, 2021, I think, she started 2 businesses, her coaching business, the Alcohol Mindset Coach, and then the other business is My Breast Friend. And what that is because she discovered her lump. One morning, she decided to create lotions and body washes that are developed to promote awareness and support for breast care. And it's encouraging women to connect with their bodies and make their breast self-checks a regular, empowering practice. And also a part of the proceeds will go to Breast Cancer Network of Australia. So, and Kath, she lives in Melbourne, Australia with her husband of 20 years and their 3 sons and their little Cocker Spaniel, who is named Ralph. So let's go ahead and get into the interview. Well, everybody, we are so excited. We have Kath Elliott, and she is from Melbourne, Australia, and she's also a This Naked Mind certified coach, and we went through our training together. And you're also a breast cancer survivor. And we thought it would be appropriate to invite you onto the show. So welcome to the Alcohol-Free Marriage Podcast.
Thanks, Amy and Matt. I'm so happy and privileged to be here. Look forward to our conversation today.
Oh, so do we. Well, if you could just kind of tell us a little bit about you. your family, what you do for fun besides, your businesses that you now have. But just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I'm based in Melbourne, Australia, which is down in the southeast of the country. It's spring at the moment, so we're just starting to get some beautiful blue skies and sunny days. Still pretty cool in the mornings. I've been married for 20 years. We celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary earlier this year, and I have 3 teenage sons. Oscar, who's 17, Tom, who's 16, and Hugo, who's 13. And I love hiking. So I did the Kokoda track in 2017 with my husband. So that was a pretty incredible challenge. And I try and get out into nature and go walking at least once a week. I find it really therapeutic and great for my just my nervous system. And I'm also, I love exercising as well. So I like going to the gym, and I also love catching up with my female friends and do that regularly through walks. Or I've also been part of a beautiful women's circle for the last 6 years. So we actually sit in a beautiful sacred circle and connect on the deeper things in life and have really meaningful conversations about where we're at, which is beautiful.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been trying to create something with friends here, and that just sounds beautiful and awesome to be able to really make deep, meaningful relationships with other women. I think that's
it really has been quite magical, actually, the relationships that I've formed through my women's circle. And in fact, I turned 50 2 weeks ago, and I had a special women's circle to honor my 50th with 14 of my sort of closest female friends. And it was just, it was really, I couldn't have thought of a more perfect way to celebrate my 50th. Given I celebrated my 40th with, lots of alcohol and partying.
Yep.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, actually, my 50th, because I didn't actually quit drinking until I was almost 52.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about, as I call it, my drinking career or your drinking career, and then, lead us into your story about breast cancer.
Sure. So my drinking career started, I think where a lot of people's drinking careers started as a teenager. I was a teenager growing up here in Melbourne in the 1980s, and there was a huge binge drinking culture in Australia. It was kind of what you did as a teenager. And for me, I probably had my first binge drinking experience at around the age of 13 with a girlfriend. We stole some of my parents' alcohol and drank a lot of it and got very unwell. And I remember at the time, even though I didn't like that feeling of not being unwell, there was something around this feeling of kind of losing control and doing something that I wasn't supposed to do that I really enjoyed. And I guess it wasn't, I didn't start binge drinking regularly then, but as I went into sort of the ages of 15 and 16, it became a much more regular part of my life. And what happened around that time was that I started to get some, I guess, positive affirmation from some of my male friends that I was a good drinker, that I could hold a lot of alcohol, that I could stay up with them and drink, and that, for a girl, I really was, in quite a good I guess, a good position with my drinking. And so I had this positive affirmation around it, and it became part of my identity. So I got known around my social group as being someone who was a good drinker and a big drinker. And I saw that as something that was really positive. And so my drinking was actually something that I thought I should do, and that I actually had to show up and drink a lot when I went out. And so I would often drink well into, the early hours of the morning. There were lots of blackouts, there were lots of forgetting, lots of hazy memories. But at that point in time, I thought that was what everyone else was really doing, and that it was pretty normal as a teenager, young adult, to be drinking like that. So I didn't have any real warning signals then, only that obviously drinking had become part of, connected to my identity, I think, a bit more than maybe other people's.
And what's the drinking age in Australia then and now? Is it the same?
Drinking age is 18 in Australia. Yeah, so it's less than what it is in the States. And yeah, I think what happened then was, as I went into kind of my 20s, my binge drinking really ramped up when I went to university. I wasn't really that studious at university. There was a big drinking culture at university. And I also, I didn't have the structures around me to really stop me from drinking during the week. So there was quite a lot of drinking that was done over that part of my life. And that was when I really started to, I guess, question my drinking. I started to drink a lot more. I was having a lot more blackouts. I was in a serious relationship at that point in time, and we were having lots of arguments when I was drinking, and I was a bit out of control. I was starting to do things that weren't really true to the person that I wanted to be. But even then, I didn't really know how to address it. So I guess I just kept pushing it aside, because what I would do is I would have these binges, and then I would sort of send myself into exile for a little while. So I'd just be like, okay, you've got to stop now for a couple of weeks or a month. So I'd take time away from drinking to prove to myself that I didn't really have a problem. And that really only exacerbated the problem, to be honest, because I'd come out of those periods of abstinence and then throw myself into, more binging, which would then, lead to an awful negative cycle. And this really continued until I stopped in my mid-40s. I obviously, met my husband and got married and had children. And there were times over those years where I didn't drink as much, obviously when I was pregnant. But it was just this kind of holding pattern. So there'd be, times when I wasn't drinking, but then I'd throw myself back into drinking when, once I'd had my boys. And the other thing that happened is that my husband and I went through some really difficult times in our early 40s. Financially, we were going through some really some challenges, which placed a lot of pressure on our marriage. And we started to binge drink quite a bit together to sort of relieve some stress and tension. And I then started to really have some warning bells around my drinking, because I was getting very angry. I was drinking really to cope with what was going on in my life. And yeah, even then, though, it still took me, 5 or 6 years before I eventually changed my mindset around drinking, because initially I thought that I was going to, I would be able to find, I guess, a happy place somewhere in moderation. I thought I must be able to find it, because I'm not a daily drinker. I hadn't classified myself as someone who had a problem where I needed to stop drinking. And so I never even contemplated that maybe some time away indefinitely could give me a different perspective on drinking. And it was, I guess, it was a holiday in 2019 in April. My husband and I and our 3 boys were away in Queensland, which is north of Melbourne. It's a beautiful, sunny holiday destination. And I had a really bad sort of binge experience. And my boys saw me really, really drunk. And I couldn't remember any of it. I fell and hit my head and woke up the next morning in a pit of shame and embarrassment. And my boys were very, very worried about me and my behavior. And I did some real soul searching after that. And I remember sitting on the sand the morning afterwards. I just went to have some time out for myself. And I just gave myself a real talking to in a way and just said, this isn't working for you anymore. This isn't who you want to be. You want to be a better parent. You want to be a better person. It's really time to take an extended break from drinking. I really think this is what you need, just to see what that feels like. And I didn't stop straight away, but I didn't have another binge after that. And I then decided that I was going to have an extended break away from drinking in the July of that year of 2019, and that I wasn't going to have an end date on it. And I had my last drink on the 30th of June 2019, and that was the decision, and that has continued to be a decision that I've made ever since then.
And since we're the marriage podcast, did your husband quit? Has he quit, or did he quit at the same time, or how did that go?
He didn't quit then. He decided to stop drinking around about a year after I did. And, it was I had a very interesting sort of, I guess, period leading up to that. So I stopped drinking on the 1st of July, and 6 weeks into stopping drinking, I found a lump in my breast and was diagnosed with breast cancer very, very quickly after that. So it was hugely traumatic. And normally in traumatic situations in the past, what I'd done to relieve or deal with it was drink. And so it was interesting that initial shock and trauma triggered this, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe I should go back and have some drinks. And this was the start of the conversation that started going on in my head. But very, very quickly, I also had this alternative voice that started to say to me, hang on a second, I think it's time to start asking some questions about your drinking and whether or not it could have contributed to this breast cancer diagnosis. And so I started to do some research into breast cancer and alcohol consumption. And I was quite shocked at what I learnt, and also shocked that I hadn't really seen a lot of the information that I started to uncover in the public, openly in the public domain, I guess, as a public health campaign. And so I very quickly decided that definitely whilst I was going through treatment that I wouldn't drink, and that felt like a really good decision for me. But my husband's drinking actually got worse during my treatment. He started to drink quite a bit more after promising me that he wasn't going to. And I think it was, for him, it was, because he was really stressed about what I was going through, but it created a huge amount of stress in our marriage. And he eventually decided, I think a year later, that for the sake of our relationship and our family, that he was going to see what life was going to be like without drinking. He could see the positive effect that it had on my life. and where I was going, I think, with it. And so he went and sought some help himself with his drinking, and he pretty much, I think he had his last drink on the 28th of June 2020. So yeah, we've both been, alcohol free for over 2 years now, and it has been an incredible decision for our relationship and our family. And it hasn't always been easy, because we've noticed that in some social circles we're just not included in things like we used to be, particularly with big drinking groups. But overall, it's been amazing. It really has been great.
Oh, that
sounds like a very similar, familiar path.
Yeah, very similar.
But that whole getting cut out of some of the drinking circles, it starts to make you in general reevaluate your relationships with everybody, right? It's like, was my relationship with them only just drinking? Like, did we have nothing other than just the drinking? And you kind of find out who those people were, just drinking buddies, which is fine if you're a drinker, right? And those who you had an actual deeper relationship with, who want to hang out with you, not just to have a drink.
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. That's so true. And I think we did have lots of drinking buddies, lots of big drinking buddies, because we all sort of enabled each other's drinking. And I think once you change that behavior, you do really work out who your genuinely close friends are. And so for me, it's actually been I think a positive thing, even though initially it was a little uncomfortable. You kind of knew the people that would drop away, and we just have our lives set up differently. We don't go out as much like that as we used to. I like being at home in the evenings a lot more. I like going to bed early, and I like getting up early, so that I can enjoy that part of the day. This morning I got up, I meditated, I took my son up to school, and I love that start to the day. I love seeing the sunrise, and of course I sometimes saw the sunrise rise when I was drinking. That was because I hadn't been to bed.
Yeah. Well, I guess my question too is, how did you find this naked mind with all of this?
Yeah, so I found this naked mind in the July, when I stopped drinking. I decided to sign up to the live alcohol experiment in July 2019. So that was a beautiful part of the journey for me, because I'd never really joined a group or sought any community support before. And by joining up and being part of that community, I realized that I was absolutely not alone with the questions that I was asking about my drinking, that there was so many people all over the world that were struggling, that my binge drinking was not something to be ashamed of either, that it was something that a lot of other people were also going through. And so that absolutely helped me feel like it wasn't my fault, and that it was my responsibility to do something about it, but that it wasn't my fault that I was in the situation that I was in. And of course, 30 plus years of binge drinking behavior, it's not easy to do it on your own. And so I think, I guess the other thing that I really enjoyed about this naked mind was I started to learn a whole lot of information that I'd never come across before around alcohol's effect on, the brain and the body. And that made me feel relieved, actually. I sort of felt relieved that, of course, the way that I was responding was really, it was normal, and that it wasn't, I didn't actually have a problem. And that I felt like there was going to be a way out for me if I just continued to make a decision every day just to stay alcohol free and to keep on the path that I was on. And so that first month was amazing. I really loved the alcohol experiment, all the information that I took in, and it really gave me a lot of momentum moving into the next month after that. And then obviously in the August, at the end of the August, I had the breast cancer diagnosis. And that, that obviously changed a lot for me. But, I also see both of these events, choosing to go alcohol free and then having breast cancer. In a way, they have both now become really important things, lived experience that I'm now using in my new, career as an alcohol coach and a, breast cancer ambassador advocate around the links between alcohol consumption and breast cancer. So sometimes life throws us challenges and we're not quite sure what is going to happen. But for me, I now look at my 30-year binge drinking career as it has gifted me the lived experience that I've been able to take into this next phase of my life.
Yeah, I love that. And I was just thinking about that when just before you said, gifted. I feel like now, and I've heard it from other people, it's like it was a gift. It's like now I have this lived experience and I can now take this forward and help other people. And I look at what you're doing, and I'd love for you to kind of just, tell us a little bit more about that experience going through, when you found out you had the cancer, but then when you like that realization that, I guess maybe that more of that eye-opening, like, wow, what alcohol does cause cancer.
Yeah, because you mentioned you did you did research and you found out the big impact. So yeah, I'm curious to hear that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you never forget. For me, I found a lump in my breast. I was just going about my normal morning routine. And it's like, it was the day started off as any ordinary day at that point in time in my life. And it's funny how I now look back and go, oh my gosh, I can remember it all in slow motion. I remember running up the stairs. I was running late I was working in PR and corporate communications. Ironically, I was going to facilitate filming a health campaign that morning. And I ran upstairs. I'd been at the gym and I was sort of really in that busy mode. And I jumped into the shower. I was sort of telling myself, you've got to hurry up. You've got to hurry up. And then I almost got this kind of voice that came into my head. It said, Kath, slow down, take a couple of deep breaths. It doesn't matter if you're going to be a little bit late. And then I heard this, go out into your bedroom and look at your body in the mirror. And I just bought this big new floor to wall mirror. Literally, it had arrived 3 weeks beforehand. And I went out and looked at my body in the mirror. And that's when I saw this kind of raised sort of dimpled skin on my right-hand side at the top of my breast. And my hand went to it and I could feel quite a large lump there. And, I just remember freezing. I remember my heart just beating. I could hardly draw a breath. And I went to scream out to my husband and the words wouldn't come. And I guess right then and there, I knew something really serious had happened. I'm definitely not someone to jump to negative conclusions, but I think instinctually I knew then that I had breast cancer. And it was, just that life-changing moment, really. And I went to the GP later that day and was referred to the Melbourne Breast Unit, and I had a diagnosis very, very quickly within 2 days and had to start chemotherapy treatment within a week of finding that lump. So because it was an aggressive growing cancer, it hadn't spread to my lymph nodes or anywhere else. So, for that, I was very grateful. But I did have to start the treatment quickly. And I remember the first day of leaving our house to go to my first chemo appointment was just, it was so hard. It felt, the tears just didn't stop. And I was so worried about, putting these toxins into my body because, I had been someone who'd been very careful about, the types of food that I ate. Even though I was getting smashed on weekends, I was still, drinking my green juices and trying to eat organic. And, and you often hear this in drinkers, sometimes they've got these two sides to their life. And so going to chemo for that first time was really difficult. But I did a lot of work on that as well. I went and saw a kinesiologist and an energy healer to just help me change my mindset around being open to receiving the chemo and letting it really focus on what it needed to do, and that I could still support myself through diet and other complementary therapies that would really help me. And so I really, very quickly, I changed my perspective and realized that if I could embrace treatment and healing with a positive mindset, that I was going to learn through it as well. I was going to heal myself, and I was going to address elements of my lifestyle that maybe had contributed to a cancer diagnosis. I really very much saw the cancer diagnosis as, cells in my body that for whatever reason had, grown out of control, and that the only things really I have control over are trying to reduce stress in my body, reduce inflammation, and enjoy my life as much as possible. And so that's really what I focused on. And I actually started, and this might sound crazy, but I actually started talking to the lump, and I started to give my breast love and care rather than giving it words of negativity. And I found that really, really, it made me, in my mind, feel good. And so I didn't feel angry, and I didn't feel, why has this happened to me? I just very much felt like this is a challenge. We all have challenges in life, and this is one that I'm going to deal with, and I'm going to try and learn lessons from it. And so then I started to look into the links between alcohol consumption and breast cancer. And oh my gosh, I mean, I was really surprised. The thing that really surprised me most was that it's really, low to moderate drinking increases your risk of breast cancer. And I guess I was under the impression that it would probably be only really heavy drinking. And what I learned was that, there's a fantastic campaign run out of the States, I think, whether it's the States or Canada, called Drink Less for Your Breasts. So I did a lot of research through that website because it was a really good hub of all the information and all the studies. And what I learned was that, one drink a day, so 7 drinks a week, increases your overall risk of breast cancer by between 10 and 14%, which is huge.
Which I'm assuming that's on the low end. So that if you increase your alcohol, you're increasing that percentage probably, right?
Yeah. So every drink. So basically, if you're a woman, you have a 1 in 8 chance of getting breast cancer over your lifetime. And every drink you have increases your overall risk. Full stop. That's it. And I was really shocked at that. And so, and the other thing that was interesting for me is that, alcohol really messes with your estrogen levels. And a lot of breast cancer is driven by increased estrogen growth. My breast cancer had a very, very high level of estrogen measured. So again, that was an interesting thing for me to find out too. and so in terms of this whole estrogen kind of, I guess, thing as well, I'd never heard about this before. I'd never heard that alcohol increases your estrogen, circulating estrogen, and that can be linked to breast cancer. And so I very quickly then decided that I would just start having conversations with other women around whether or not they knew this information. And, anecdotally, most people had not heard about it, didn't really know it. We didn't have any public health campaigns here in Australia specifically around alcohol and breast cancer. There is information if you search on the internet, of course. And we did have a campaign that was launched last year in one of the states that was around the links between alcohol and 7 cancers, and breast cancer was included as part of that campaign. But we have not specifically had an alcohol and breast cancer public health campaign, which I find really, really, interesting to say the least. And now that I am really open and present to the conversation, I also find myself getting rather irritated that alcohol companies actually have relationships with breast cancer charities, and that there is open promotion sometimes of fundraising through alcohol when alcohol is a proven cause of breast cancer. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm now starting to have conversations with particular charities here in Australia around, what is your policy? Why are you promoting alcohol at your events? Why are you even having alcohol at your events? So it's not popular. People don't like it because they think that you're having a go at them, or they think that when you're going through, cancer, breast cancer, whatever it is, that, you shouldn't be made to feel guilty about choices that you may have made around your drinking. And my response to that is always, of course it's our life and it's our choice, but I think it's much better that people have the correct education and information so that they can make more educated choices around their drinking. And this information just hasn't been really made readily available. So that's that's really where I come from. It's not about guilting people into not drinking or to finding a reason to blame for cancer. For me, it was really empowering for me to know that a lifestyle factor of drinking that I had probably, well and truly abused over 30 years, that, taking that lifestyle factor and deciding not to have alcohol in my life, I just felt so fantastic. I thought, well, that is, moving forward, that is one lifestyle factor that I now have control over, that I have reduced my breast cancer risk of coming back. And, there are obviously other lifestyle factors with breast cancer, exercise and diet and stress and those sorts of things. But, alcohol and having the ability to remain alcohol free has really given me a lot of confidence with my health moving forward.
Now that green juice you drink can actually do some good, right?
Exactly.
Well, and you're talking about, they don't want to acknowledge the breast cancer connection, but let's say it was only 6 types of cancers it caused. Is it that much of a leap to think it could cause 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 cancers, right? I mean, it's sort of foolish. Like, oh, well, it can cause those cancers, but it won't cause these cancers. It's circulating through your whole body. Why couldn't it possibly cause a myriad of other cancers, right? Just because you have a harder time proving it doesn't make it less possible. So
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, alcohol breaks down into, acetaldehyde, which is an even worse carcinogen than alcohol. So once that's circulating around in our system, it can damage DNA and do all sorts of things. So absolutely. I mean, any alcohol that we're having can probably create cancer anywhere in our body, because, alcohol, I think from what I understand is that it, it's soluble through all sorts of different cells in our body. So it can travel everywhere.
Yeah.
So I think in the Huberman podcast around alcohol, he talks about that. And again, I think that's really valuable information for us all to know, that sort of, body brain, that brain barrier as well. It obviously can get into that. So it's it's one of those very insidious toxins.
I agree. What kind of, because I love the fact that you are talking to these charities. I have talked to my general practitioner and was received very well with the information, and that's exciting. But how do you get this word out? Like, what would be some of your words of advice or encouragement on talking to different charities? I mean, because I'm even thinking not just breast cancer. I mean, come on, this is, I mean, I feel like even liver cancer, it's still given this whole like pass, like, oh, as you said, oh, it's for people who drink a lot. But what they're coming out and finding is, no, it's if you have even lower moderate, alcohol use disorder or consumption, it is affecting your body. But as a society, we're made to believe that it's only people who are very heavy drinkers who are going to have these effects. And I would just, like to get your take on how you got started in this process of reaching out.
Basically, yes, reaching out. So I'm quite connected with a charity here in Australia called the Breast Cancer Network of Australia. They're the main sort of consumer charity that support women who are going through breast cancer. And at the moment, I'm in conversations with them about looking at their policy around, I guess, around partnerships with alcohol companies, but also having alcohol at events and fundraising events. And so starting the conversation there around changing policy, basically. So I have had the initial meeting, and hopefully it will start a conversation that will initiate change over time. It all takes time. And the other thing that I've suggested to them as well is that they form a partnership with some alcohol-free drinks type companies or brands, so that there is the opportunity for people to have these drinks when they go to functions. Because I've been to a couple of functions, and although there might be a mineral water somewhere, there's nothing else available. It's all around alcoholic drinks, which again should not be the focus of a breast cancer fundraising event. And I think, look, the worry is that they won't get people to events, because people only go to events so they can drink. And in a way, I almost think you have to go backwards to go forwards sometimes. People will get used to the new normal. It takes time, but if we don't start doing something about it, it just feels so wrong. It doesn't feel like the right thing to be doing. And I do get, quite a lot of people DMing me saying, oh, have you seen this, this promotion or that promotion? And in fact, I got an invitation to an event for Breast Cancer Awareness Month to go to. We've got a betting agency here in Australia called Ladbrokes. So they were the main sponsor. It was at a horse racing event, and it was all around drinking. And I was just like, oh my gosh, on all levels, this is appalling.
Yeah, but you're right. I think from a fundraising standpoint, they're terrified that A, nobody will show up, and B, if they do show up, they're not going to loosen their purse strings near as much because they're not drinking. right? So their incentive is it's like, well, how could, but even if it's that baby step like you talked about of providing more and more better, that's a word, options for, because we've had events. Oh yeah, what about people who don't drink? Oh, they'll be popping water. I'm not 12, right? So, providing better options starts that cycle, and people are like, oh, if I can have a decent option and not drink at this event, maybe I'll do that, right? And you start to change it that way versus your only option is beer or pop,
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. And I think part of this is that it will take time, but you've got to start the conversations. And so I also approached the Federation for Alcohol Research and Education here in Australia around wanting to develop some sort of campaign around breast cancer and alcohol. They're reliant on government funding and that kind of thing. But the fantastic thing that's come out of it is not at this point a specific campaign, but I am featuring in it's a lived experiences campaign. And they've come and they've filmed me telling my story around binge drinking and breast cancer and, the messaging that I want to get across around that. And so that will be launching later this month. So that'll be through their social media, through mainstream media. So hopefully there'll be an opportunity for me to do some interviews and talk about it. So, this is the other way that, I'm trying to use my profile, my story to, to get the message amplified, I guess, through media where possible, and through, podcast interviews like this. I do lots of, talking about it as much as possible so that people can hear the messages.
Oh, awesome.
I love it.
Yeah.
You are such an inspiration to me, Kath, just through our training and everything. And like I said, when we got to this month, I was like, oh, this is who I want to interview. And I really appreciate you telling your story. You have given me a new sense of courage to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to go and have some hard conversations, and reaching out to different people that I know and say, you know what, we need to have a conversation, and just say, you're having these types of events. And this makes, first, I'm going to do it as, nicely as possible. It doesn't really make sense that you don't have an NA option and you're only offering this option that is actually tied to causing, cancer. And I'll have to really work on my messaging with that.
Compliment sandwich.
I mean,
compliment sandwich.
But it does make me have, that sense of, what, this is something, it's a purpose, and it's life or death. And we've personally known people who have died from not, from, breast cancer, but from other types of cancer, who are young and they're gone. And it's because of habits that were destructive. So
it's one thing to get, it's another thing to do it at your own hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and that's the thing with, I think that's the thing with alcohol. I look back at my drinking career, and I really wasn't given a lot of information around the destructive nature of alcohol. It was very much the messaging that I got was that you only had a problem with drinking if you were drinking every day, and you were, you lost your job and you were homeless type thing. And so I think things are changing. Australia, there is a real rise here of the sober curious, the alcohol-free movement. It really feels like, in 10 years or 15 years time, there will be a lot of shifts. And I still like to think of myself as, a trailblazer in this area, like, which we all are really. Often I think in the past I looked at people who didn't drink as being really boring and not cool. And now it's absolutely the opposite to me. I feel like, those of us that choose this lifestyle freely, we're the cool ones, we're the trailblazers, we're leading the way. And it'll be so exciting to see where we are in 20 years. I really think there are going to be some huge changes that are gathering momentum each and every year.
Well, alcohol or no, I've never been cool, so it just made me think I was cool. Is what I did.
Kath, we've got a couple more questions, but I wanted to first ask you, what is your favorite alcohol-free drink that you partake in?
Yeah, sure. So I haven't been a big I haven't used alcohol-free drinks necessarily as huge tools in my experience of not drinking. I've really more used like kombucha or mineral water, but in the last probably 12 months, I have really enjoyed, there's a beautiful sparkling non-alc wine that I really like from France, which is a brand called Venada, and I really enjoy that. So I had a lunch for my 50th with my family, my mum and dad and brothers and Paul and my boys, and I took a bottle of that and really enjoyed having a non-alc sparkling in a champagne glass and celebrating. So for those sorts of events, I do quite enjoy doing that. The other non-alc drink that I really quite like is a beer here in Australia called Heaps Normal, which is kind of really nice to have on just a hot day. But what I find with non-alc drinks is you don't really need that many of them. You only have one or two. Whereas when you were drinking alcoholic drinks, there was no off switch, but there definitely is with these for me. But of course, they can be very triggering for some people. And so even with the clients that I work with, we always tread very carefully around the use of them. I have some clients who they've used them and they've been an essential part of helping them transition. And for others, it has just been a no-go zone for them because it looks too much like the real thing and makes them want the real thing. So it's interesting how it's different for all of us.
Yes. Kombucha is a very popular one, though. I know. I hear that a lot. But they say it's 5 o'clock somewhere. It's actually 5 o'clock here right now.
Yeah. Well, and then the last question is, where can our listeners find you, find more about what you're doing, and your two businesses?
Yeah, sure. So my coaching business is thealcoholmindsetcoach.com, and I work one-on-one with clients, so it's one-on-one coaching programs, and specifically I work with people who identify, I guess, as high-functioning binge drinkers, and the programs I offer are generally 12 sessions at a minimum, and I have a specific binge drinking breakthrough program that I've developed based on my own experience, where we cover a whole lot of information, but a lot of that is specifically around looking at, your own binge drinking history, triggers, and then we create sort of a blueprint for moving forward and looking at how you actually disrupt that cycle and what you need to do to free yourself. So I love working with my niche. It feels like home. I think one of the great things about being a This Naked Mind coach is we've all had a lived experience of a drinking problem, and I think just being able to talk to someone who just gets and understands where you're at is half the battle, to be honest, because you just don't feel judged or ashamed, and you've got a safe space just to talk about whatever is going on. And then my My other business, My Breast Friend, is a range of body washes and body lotions that have breast self-check instructions on the back. And that business is mybreastfriend.net. And I sell the products online, and a certain percentage of the sales goes back to the Breast Cancer Network in Australia.
Oh, that is so awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Experience
so
is
much.
a great teacher.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being on with us. This has been just so eye-opening and educational. And I hope that our listeners, will just take this in the sense that we're putting this out here, that we just want to inform people of, what the risks are with alcohol and breast cancer.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Amy and Matt. I really appreciate you inviting me on. And yeah, any opportunity I get to share the message, it's always a real privilege. And, I'll finish off by, just saying that any drink that you have does increase your risk of breast cancer, and any drink you choose not to have decreases your risk. So it's not about saying completely stop drinking, but if you decide to have, a couple of alcohol-free days a week, or you decide to have a drink less on a Friday or a Saturday night, it all contributes to reducing that risk.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Kath. It was lovely talking to you in the future. I bet
the future that now we're in the past.
And she didn't have the lottery numbers or anything.
I know. But what a compelling story.
Oh, jeez.
And, go, and if you want to talk with Kath, please, reach out to her, especially if you are someone who knows someone who has breast cancer. I know she is definitely available for support.
And I appreciate her approach of, you shouldn't drink at all. We know that. But every drink you don't have increases your odds of not getting breast cancer.
Yes.
So less is more no matter what.
Yes.
None is the best, but
yes,
none is the best for breasts. Oh, just made it up. I'm sure it's not trademark our podcast, but
you know what? Just remember, ladies, to do your self exams. It is something that, if caught early, the survivability rate is now so good now. So
yep. And if you don't do it yourself, invite your partner to make it a team sport. Always willing to volunteer.
Willing to help.
Yeah, I'm always a help out. I'm a team player here. All right, kids. Well, that's it for this week on the Alcohol Free Marriage Podcast. I'm sure you're saying thank God.
You know what? And I'll say, I wish I could just take this damn it doll here, and we're just gonna whack him over the head.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and all the other fun things. You can always contact Coach Amy at amy@joyontheotherside.com. But for us, that is it for this week. Wishing you peace and love from the cornfields. I'm Matt, along with Coach Amy, and we are out.